Welcome to Wednesday, Secular Soapbox Day here on the Skeptic Haven Network. I'm your host, Mike Wiseman. As always, I'll be joined by my favorite co-host, Apostacie. Today's special guest is Kirt Lewis from the Clergy Project. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support the network on Patreon. Let's start the show. Welcome. Thanks for joining us, Kirt. Apostacie, thanks as always for joining you. How are you doing? How's everybody doing today?
Great.
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's like the intro. I had an image of Kermit the Frog, when he goes, yeah, like, yeah, just a minute.
That's exactly how I feel from it. Exactly.
I can't move his arms around like he does it.
Oh, come on. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Kirt. What do you do?
What do I do presently? For work, I work for an international NGO called International Rescue Committee. And here in the Sacramento area with their office here. And specifically, I provide free professional financial coaching in partnership with the city of Sacramento to predominantly low to moderate income residents. Wow. That's what keeps me busy. And then outside of that, my two girls and my lovely girlfriend and my cat, Ginger, and just whatever other miscellaneous life things are out there. Yeah.
Got to throw in the cat, of course.
Yeah, of course.
You can't forget
the life
the
exciting.
feline friends.
Yeah. No, I tell people that cat, I've had that cat for a good length of time. And went through a divorce a couple of years ago, and the cat came with me because that cat is very closely bonded with that cat. I think I use the analogy. I think Ginger had more of a life-saving presence in my life than the God that I used to adhere to. It's amazing how wonderful our pet partners can be in our life when we're going through really dark times. It seems like they're the actual real source of unconditional love, if you want to use that phrase. So
yeah. No, for sure. Get yourself an animal.
So we have totally exalted Ginger the cat.
Ginger,
well,
praise Ginger.
I know. Praise Ginger. Exactly. Starting a new religion. Okay.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Clergy Project?
Yeah. So the Clergy Project is an amazing community group that I connected with a couple of years ago. It's been going for quite some time now, and I'm probably not going to do it full justice in the elevator speech, but in short, it's a community of individuals who were either formerly clergy, who have now left their religious beliefs and embraced atheism in general, or those who are still serving in clergy roles, but they're just at a point in time where their questions or their doubts or their departure from their religious beliefs, I should say, is they just don't feel comfortable for probably a number of obvious reasons sharing that yet. There's a lot of fears and anxieties that go through individuals who have been in those roles and making that transition, hopefully to make that transition into a place where they're more authentically themselves in terms of their beliefs and the things that they want to accomplish with their life. So the Clergy Project is a community for both of those groups to really support one another as we've made those changes or plan to make those changes in our lives.
Yeah, no, that's a hell of a thing. It's not easy to do. Livelihood for some of them.
Did you become part of the Clergy Project before or after leaving?
I learned of it actually after. And so I connected with that. It's been about 5 years. Actually, it was 5 years ago this month in December. So December 2017 was when I left my my last vocational ministry role.
Wow.
And I suppose at that time I wasn't maybe totally outspoken in terms of leaving Christianity. entirely. But I stopped attending church, left vocational, the vocational ministry aspect of that, and was well along in that journey. So I think it was sometime after that, and I'm trying to remember how I found it through social media or connection, but learned about them, had a kind of a phone. There's a phone screening interview process because there's a lot of confidentiality is really important, especially for those individuals who are still
Definitely.
that's their livelihood. It's the, so we try to do our due diligence to make sure that it's a safe space for individuals in that kind of position. So I think it was sometime there, either late 2018, 2019, when I connected with the Clergy Project, and it's been trying to be a part of that group, whatever way I can since then.
It's awesome. So now your last role in the church, what was your last role you played?
So my last role was serving as the director of the Sacramento field office of World Relief. So World Relief is known as, or is organizationally, it's the humanitarian arm of the National Association of Evangelicals. So it's been around since post-World War II. And I had kind of made a pivot, a transition in terms of vocational ministry from pastoral ministry, which I ended up serving in different pastoral roles for about 16 years. But that also overlapped with me kind of phasing that out and then taking on, being really engaged in the humanitarian social work, faith-based or religiously based social work field, in particular with World Relief. I was with them from 2011 to 2017. And one of the roles that they do is they are one of 9 federally contracted NGOs, nonprofits that work with the State Department in refugee resettlement. So I've done a pretty deep dive over the last decade or so in working with refugees, other forcibly displaced populations, undocumented immigrants, but predominantly refugees, special immigrant visa recipients from Afghanistan and Iraq. A lot of people might be familiar a little bit more with that story over the last couple of years of individuals who had to flee those countries because they worked in some kind of a support role with the U.S. military government, sometimes as embedded interpreters with, military units and so forth. So I made that pivot, and that was the last, religiously based vocational role that I was in.
Interesting. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I used to, I still do it because I'm going to do it right now, but I would quote my favorite philosopher, Indiana Jones, when he would say it's in the first movie, he said, it's not the years, it's the mileage. I felt like, and I'm a little bit older now than I was then, I'm 47, but I felt like I've had some really interesting, peculiar experiences in my life, in my 20s and 30s and into my 40s that it felt like I've lived a lot for the first 47 years. And so I'm like some of my connection to working with refugees also goes back to I took a break, if you want to call it, from ministry post 9/11. I was very much in, again, the evangelical conservative Fox News worldview world. And so I was in my late 20s when 9/11 happened, and I actually left ministry to enlist in the Army. So I spent a couple of years in the Army, and I did a tour of duty in Iraq. So I learned in a very personal way, the realities of warfare, and and that eventually led to some passion and to work with individuals who have suffered as a result of war and conflict.
Man.
But I'm a bit of a, church-wise, I'm a bit of an evangelical mutt, because I've been a part of a number of denominations, predominantly the main ones that I've either grown up in, because I was definitely a born on Saturday and church on Sunday kid growing up. the main churches, denominations, evangelical denominations that I was a part of growing up was either American Baptist. I eventually was on staff at an American Baptist church a number of years later, Christian and Missionary Alliance, briefly with Evangelical Free. And then I would describe it as kind of like a non-denominational independent, what I call a Baptist-costal, kind of like a charismatic, but some Baptist theological traits in it. That was my first job out of Bible college, was as a youth pastor at a church like that. So I've experienced a lot of different aspects of that tradition.
All different flavors.
All the different flavors.
You've been to Baskin Robbins.
Yeah, it was.
You sampled it all.
Well, then when I was at World Relief, I was partnering with churches all over the spectrum, even more.
Man.
So then working, so I got a pretty good experience, cross section of the whole group.
So, did you lose your faith while you were there, or did you leave there and then lose your faith, or was it a process? How did that work?
Leaving
the last job you had, your last role. Yeah,
it was starting to unravel during that time. So I think that there are, what I've discovered so far in my own kind of process of healing and deconstruction is there's three major factors that led to that. One was definitely over the years was my growing discomfort or dissatisfaction with answers to difficult questions, rational questions that were being asked about the Bible, about doctrines. I found that, and I found that even before I decided to leave Christianity altogether, I just stopped teaching on certain things because I taught my first sermon when I was 18 years old. I preached my first sermon. So I taught the Bible for a quarter of a century. It's always weird when I say that.
I hate putting, big number. Big
century. So I was very, very avidly just wanted to dig into the word, And so I like particularly the doctrine of hell, especially in its evangelical, Protestant form, just never sat right with me. And so after a while, I just stopped teaching it. I focused on other things. So there was those aspects, certainly scientific and archaeological aspects of the Bible, just slowly unraveling just how mythological this ancient document is. So those things were chipping away at it. Then I would say that on a personal level, because I grew up, in a context where you hear a lot about the promises of God, build your life on the promises of God. If you build your life on the promises of God, A plus B equals, C. So this is going to be A. Well, not analogy, but you get the point. It's very formulaic that if I do these things, this should be the result. And I just found that in my personal life, I became more and more dissatisfied with even my work, what I was involved in. I would say that there was also I was very dissatisfied in my marriage. So I think that there was within that. And again, I felt like I followed all of the patterns. Like I was, I kept myself till marriage, and I felt like
all the things.
I did all the right things. So again, this should lead to, a very God ordained, happy marriage. So I think there was a lot of those things that they just weren't. It wasn't translating into anything that I was told it would be. So I think my growing dissatisfaction with that was definitely a key, another key factor. And then, as you can imagine, I was here. I am the director of at the time, especially by the time we got to 2017, it was the second largest refugee resettlement agency in the entire U.S.
Wow.
Working with evangelical churches to welcome predominantly Muslim refugees in the lead up and the immediate aftermath of the 2016 election
Oh
just
my gosh.
underscored it. I started to see and connect some dots
Yeah.
that there was something intrinsically a part of this religious belief system. Not that this wasn't like an aberration or a contradiction, but no, there was something deeply ingrained in this belief system that draws people towards a nationalistic, exclusivistic type of worldview and living that I was getting to see, play out in very stark terms, in very,
Yeah.
very real world ways that was deeply tragic to me. And I was deeply grieved by seeing the church all of a sudden embrace all of that. And then it got me to reflect. It's like, maybe this isn't an aberration. Maybe this isn't just a, maybe I'm not making the mistake that some people say, oh, you're confusing, the church for Christ. So, it's like, no, and then not only just in its present day form, but if you look at it historically, it's like this keeps happening over and over and over again throughout its history.
You know them by their fruits.
Yeah,
exactly.
really, with just about any kind of exclusivistic religion. So it doesn't have to be Christianity, but any kind of particularly hierarchical, exclusivistic religion has this propensity to get drawn towards this kind of violent,
us versus them.
Us versus them. That's what I was going to say.
Us versus them approach. So, and also related to that, being a veteran. And then working with refugees, I just became so repulsed by the violence of the biblical narrative. So, it's one thing. In many ways, I can actually say the scientific, archaeological reasons that played a factor. Some of the doctrines and their effect on people's real lives, the toxicity of that from a psychological standpoint, that played a factor. But in my journey, it was seeing just how violent the Bible is, and then the effect of that really led to me just like I'm out. Like I can't. There's nothing here that I could adhere to.
Faith is gone. Everything's nothing to hold on to left.
So I did end up writing a short. I blogged like crazy for
I've seen that. It's good stuff too.
Probably like a lot of people. It's like
you need to get it out.
I got to get out. So I just started writing a lot of content, but I think it was around 2019 that I remember it's like, no, I'm going to write. I wrote this one piece called a public declaration of unfaith. And I remember writing it. I remember going out afterwards. I took my 13, well, now she's 13, but this a few years ago, my oldest daughter out for a hike, because this is a big deal. She in particular saw her dad go the full spectrum of being highly engaged, a pastor, a leader in the Christian community, all the way to rejecting that. And I didn't want to make light of that, the difficulties for her in just adjusting to that world. And I remember going out on a walk with her and apologizing to her for making her world way too small for so long. And so that was kind of the point at which I formally, people knew it's like, no, he's done. He's gone. We've lost him.
He's gone to the dark side.
He's got exactly.
Cookies. We got cookies. They got dry.
How did she take it?
How'd she take it?
My oldest daughter is interesting. We had a very interesting journey in the last couple of years because going through I highly not recommend. Is that the right way to say it?
Do not recommend.
If possible, try not to deconstruct and go through a divorce and a career change in the middle of a pandemic. Which,
Okay.
try not to.
Great timing, Kurt. Great timing.
I did the deconvert.
Yeah,
You did.
if you can avoid
I
that,
did.
possibly.
But no divorcing. My husband's awesome.
That's good. Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad to do it. So,
Yeah.
And
Thanks, Spider-Man.
And in all
Yeah.
fairness, I think that like I have a great deal of at least I have a great deal of compassion, and I hope a lot for my ex-wife, who's we still have to, we still partner together in raising children. She's still very much in the religious fold. She grew up in a very conservative Assemblies of God background. So so that's and so my daughters now go back and forth in their worlds between conservative Assemblies of God land and dad's
tough.
Atheist dad.
Heathen, paganistic, sinful, rebellious life
into a secular home.
I know that I'm leading children
does she
astray.
like pray over them before they leave?
I don't know. But back to my daughter though, what's interesting is she's still she might even watch this at some point. So I was like, because I like sharing stuff with her. We're like a real, so who knows?
Good.
She might watch it. But she's going through her own journey, and part of her own journey this last year and a half or so ago was her coming to a point of recognizing or identifying that her sexual orientation wasn't straight, and that she's learning more about herself, but that something felt different and something wasn't aligned. So it was really interesting for me to be going through this process of deconstructing from my own religious faith. And in many ways, I became the safest place to go to, because she could see that I was going through something where I was wrestling at a very deep level and trying to become authentic, strive to be authentic. And then she was trying, that's what she's still aiming to do today. Both immensely proud of both my daughters and how they've weathered all of the storms of the last couple of years.
That's awesome.
So anyways, I feel like we got in a couple of different rabbit trails, but
no, this is
interesting.
That's how my mind works anyway, so we're good.
Yeah.
No, and a lot of people, they ask me how my children have responded to, because my oldest is 10 and he grew up going to Christian school, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I'm no longer a Christian, I'm an atheist and I'm outspoken. So I, wanted to also ask, how have your children responded? So
yeah, I know what I've tried to do, and I'm parenting is the concept of perfection is nowhere near.
It's overrated. That's what I think.
Parenting. What I've tried to do in everything is I want to make sure that I'm giving them space to figure things out, because I don't want to make the mistake of being like, well, you believe this before, and now I want you to believe this before.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
now, because this is what Dad believes. So I put a lot of emphasis on like it is okay if you don't believe exactly what I believe. I want you to learn how to think on your own.
Yeah.
How to sense who you are, and find out who you are, and be true to yourself.
Yes.
And if you are doing that and you're not sensing the pressures of the two big pressures of either fear or shame, I think you're on the right path. So I'm trying to do my best to, and now they know my opinions at times, especially my oldest daughter. And that's what, it's okay. It's good for them to hear Dad be really honest. But I've tried to do my best to create some space. I should say another thing that's been really helpful in that is I still have some wonderfully close friends who are still a part of some of the more liberal progressive.
Thanks, Aunt Kathy.
Liberal progressive.
You have a fan.
And Aunt Kathy, is that anything?
Yeah.
So awesome. But those people in my life, because they're extremely loving and compassionate, they adhere to some some religious belief systems, but what they do adhere to is so radically different than what I was experiencing in my conservative evangelical world, and it's driving them. They're people I consider that are always growing. They're growing. They're evolving in their own understanding. So it's not a closed system in their mind.
Yeah.
And I love that about them. And so I think that finding ways that if my oldest daughter still wants to adhere to some aspects of Christian tradition or symbolism or whatever, it's like, okay, well, here's other people you can connect to who are doing that without thinking that you, as a non-straight, as a gay young woman, are, as it says in the Assemblies of God's website, behaving in a way that is destined for eternal judgment. So,
exactly.
I try to lean and build bridges as best as I can with people of goodwill who are open and growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Why would you want to have a relationship with somebody that thinks you deserve to burn in hell?
My kids.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Torture.
Yeah.
So do you remember your last
One thing
sermon?
I told.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no. I was going to add one more little thing. Is one thing I've told my son repeatedly is, I'm learning new things because my worldview has expanded, and I said to him, you know what, if you learn something new, you can come and tell me, because I could be wrong about something, and it's exciting to learn new things. So come and tell me when you find something that you're excited about and you want to share, because when I find out something new, I run and tell him, even though he's 10 and I'm 38. And because I want him to be excited to come and tell me things too, right? And not be afraid. And so we have that open communication. And I've also told him when I have been wrong, like, hey, I thought this was the only way to live, but I was wrong. And you know what? I can be wrong about other things. So come and tell me if you see something that I could be wrong about. So and
that's
like,
out, hash it out. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think that has all the hallmarks of good parenting in it, right? It's just that I've always thought that's true just in people who are in some role of a leadership role or some role of influence over others, that unfortunately, because a number of like religious and societal messages, I think, that have been pounded into our brains over and over again, we think that those individuals have to basically have all the ansers. Like that's what qualifies somebody, is that they know.
That's what I
can
thought.
go to this person. They know. And I found the best kind of leaders, influencers, what have you, are individuals who have the courage and ability to grow in front of people. And that takes humility. It takes a willingness to ask, to say, I don't know, I'll find out, or let's find out together. And I think that's
Hey Siri.
Yeah, that's the best. Hey,
We
Siri,
do that a lot at this house.
We have Googles in every room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's important that they see you struggle sometimes, or if there is a struggle, let them know, help them be a part of it. Ask questions. So it's always good to involve the kids. Not always, but most of the time.
Yeah. If it's age appropriate and understanding, then yeah.
Absolutely.
But actually, Michael, I liked your last question. So if you want.
Oh yeah. What was your last sermon? That's very curious.
That's really interesting. And it's what's interesting about it is I actually the last time I preached at a church on a Sunday morning was after I had left ministry and stopped going to church. And as I shared, I have a couple of, I have more than 3 or 4 really good people I consider very, very good friends who are still in various religious leadership roles. And one of them is, but definitely on the very, progressive liberal end that as an evangelical, if I was like a tried and true evangelical, I would look at them and say they're not even believers. They're like,
I totally know what you mean.
Those are real Christians.
They are not
whatsoever. As soon as you question even the inerrancy of the Bible, you're pretty much
you're done.
out.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But
Yeah.
so one of these friends of mine, his name's Jonathan, and he invited me to come and speak at his church. And I think I remember sitting down with him and telling him, was like, you know where I'm at, right? You know, kind of like, I don't know what's going to come out. Like, what am I going to say? You're, and he's like, no, like, he's like this community that I lead is largely a safe space for people who, so I honestly don't even remember what I spoke on. I know that I was very honest of just saying, like, I've left, I'm not, not attending church, so it was an interesting message. I should see if I should find it somewhere.
Yeah.
I actually found some of my old sermons on CDs that I'm like,
did you cringe?
I watched like 5 minutes of one of them. One, I found out that I have a really annoying physical mannerism when I preached, where I would just slightly sway every once in a while. But if you speed it up on fast forward, it's really cool. You look like you're flying around. But it would be interesting at the right time. It might be therapeutic. I don't know, to sit down, or re-traumatizing. I don't know which.
Yeah,
I'll make sure to schedule. I'll schedule an appointment with my therapist, like right after I do that. But so I don't remember the details of it, but I do remember that I did appreciate, it was kind of an interesting way to conclude that time in my life, where I just had a moment okay, I'm going to get up in front of a church. I'm not paid to be there. Actually, I think they did give me a little stipend for being there. So that was nice.
Love offering.
Yeah, a little love offering. Yeah, exactly. As the practice goes. But I felt actually pretty good about what I shared there in terms of being honest about my own journey.
Did you hear any feedback from it?
I just, other than the typical feedback that usually most preachers get, which is very rarely will usually on Sunday, after you leave the pulpit and you walk down or whatever, people are like, I remember growing up in traditions where the pastor would always go to the back of the church and would give a benediction, and everybody on the way out, they would stop and they would shake the pastor's hand. I grew up mostly in like small, mid-sized churches. And of course they would have great message, pastor. Wow, you really knocked that one out. I used to get in the habit of stopping them. I'm like, really, what was your favorite part? I ask them that. And they're like, oh,
that's a bad move.
All of it is so good. I don't know. So
that part where you said Jesus,
yeah, Jesus. Yeah, when you said Jesus and love, I like love.
Liar.
Love is good.
I love love.
Love is love.
I love that.
I love it.
Love is love. I don't know if I would say that.
So I don't know. It's been a few years. I mean, it's been almost, like I said, almost 5 years since that last happened. But I'll have to go back to it. It's still friends.
Yeah.
He invites me on occasion to come and guest speak at this thing that he hosts called Theology Pub, where they meet at a pub and they all talk theology. And so he has like a panel of really interesting people. And like, I'm the one, like, let's have the atheists come and join the conversation. And he used to be a pastor and all that. So
it'll be great.
I'll have to go back and see if he has it recorded somewhere.
That's so funny. Do you have a favorite sermon? Like one you used to preach a lot, or?
I actually used to, I didn't do this too often, but I used to do some first person narrative sermons where I would basically act as the role of one of the people. And I remember doing a first person narrative sermon where I was Philemon. And I was Philemon as if I was talking about my frustration with Onesimus, this character Onesimus, who used to serve in my household, but now had run away and met Paul and all of that kind of stuff. And now Paul had sent him back. So I'm angry about that. And then he shows up and he hands me a letter. And the letter is the book of Philemon. And in part of the sermon, I read it out loud as if I'm reading it out loud in front of Onesimus, this former slave who was my slave, basically.
Very unique.
So
You should have been a drama teacher.
Right.
I've always loved. I have loved film. I used to. I always thought. For a long time, I thought I wanted to go into film. I was like, this would be fun. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
Actually, I grew up in Marin County, which is just north of San Francisco, and I actually grew up about 15 minutes away from a place called Skywalker Ranch. So this is where like George Lucas and his empire.
That would be why.
Yeah. So I believe it or not, I used to see him. I used to see him at the grocery store. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No.
Yeah, because he lived in the area.
What was he buying?
Just what a grocery. I don't know. It's
Marshmallows. I don't know.
Marshmallows, But,
what does George Lucas buy at the grocery store?
Yeah, exactly. What is toilet paper? I guess he actually takes a shit, but
no.
I know.
Don't give away the secrets.
I know. No, but he
doesn't poop.
Yeah, so it was strange. But that always
Girl.
I used to be into film because of that. I was so close to it, and we'd hear stories about the
That's
stuff
so cool.
with that. So it was kind of neat. I was born in 1974 too. So I was like 3 years old when my parents, they told me, it's like, you sat on our lap when we went and saw Star Wars. The original Star Wars. I don't remember.
You got one of those
Anyways,
stories.
But thank you for the compliment. I do enjoy drama.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, did you take it in high school? Is that what you like?
No, actually, I was far more musical in high school. I really excelled at playing the trumpet. In fact, it was interesting.
The drums.
I was going to say, you're not a drummer.
Not a drummer. I've got this rolling thing going on. Most of the Christians that play drums are now atheists. And that's a lot of it.
I didn't know that.
But not the trumpeters.
That's a
not
new
the
one.
trumpeters. No, they're still in there. I'm an anomaly, I guess, to that.
Yeah.
No, but
I'll write you down. Though.
Actually, I can play the drums a little bit because my brother played the drums.
There it is.
So whenever he would take a break from practicing, I would wander in his room and I'd start banging around on stuff. And before I knew it, a few years later, I could keep a rhythm. So
there's something to this theory, I'm telling you.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. Let's work on this. Let's work on this.
I'm taking a tally here. Each
yes. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, drums.
How many drumming atheists have you had on this?
All of them. All of them.
That's great.
Oh my
but it's interesting. I loved music. I also loved sports. But part of the really tragic thing about growing up in that environment, in terms of spiritual manipulation and abuse, is whether it's stated explicitly or not, there really is a sense in which what you want is not what is most important. In fact, it's to be suspect, if anything, because you're still struggling with your sin nature and all of that. So you should really question that to begin with. And then two, in that environment, it was kind of clear, even though it wasn't stated, that if you really wanted to be among God's elite, and serve him at the highest level, it's like you wanted to either be a missionary or a pastor, like a youth pastor or senior pastor.
So, man, I hated that one. You're going to be a youth pastor.
I know, exactly. So, I felt like I succumbed to that message, I should say. And my senior year in high school had what at the time I thought was like this really profound spiritual experience. I really now understand it more as the results of emotional and psychological coercion and kind of building up and all the kinds of factors that come to play there. But I felt like it's like, okay, I guess that's when I felt like I was called into ministry. And I was originally going to go and major in music. I was going to go to a Christian school because if you're a good evangelical, you don't want to go off to one of those pagan schools.
Secular.
So originally I was going to go to Biola, Bible Institute of Los Angeles down in Southern California. Hold on. I just totally mixed up my story. That's where I wanted to go for seminary. Originally, I'm sorry, I was going to go to Azusa Pacific University, which is another Christian liberal arts school down there. and I was going to major in music because they had a pretty strong music program. So I thought I was going to do that, or I really loved playing basketball. So can't see right here, but I'm fairly tall, not NBA. I'm a short midget. Midget, that's the wrong word. Sorry.
It's okay.
But I'm 6'4", so I love playing basketball. And so what was interesting is I remember two really profound choices. It might not seem that big, but when I was a freshman in high school, I tried out and I made the basketball team. And then I quit it about a week later to join a class on evangelism. It's called Evangelism Explosion course. It was a big thing in the late 80s, early 90s. And I just thought that that's what God would want me to do. Instead of playing basketball, this would be a lot more meaningful to go out and win souls for Jesus. So
God would be happy with me.
Yeah. And then I same thing when I finished high school, I thought I was going to originally go and major in music down at Azusa. I put that aside. I said, no, I'm going to go be a pastor. So I went north, and I ended up attending a school called Multnomah Bible College, or Multnomah, used to be called Multnomah School of the Bible. Now it's Multnomah University. Sometimes it's referred to as the Moody of the West. So it'll give you an idea of Moody Bible Institute. It's kind of all in that vein. All of these schools started in like the heydays of fundamentalism in the 20s and 30s, when, Christian fundamentalism was reacting to, these godless liberals who were compromising on us. So we got to create our own institutions. Thank
you, Stacy's mom. Every good Christian knows Santa is Satan and the elves are his.
So
that's a new one. That's hilarious.
You didn't know that? Oh yeah.
They should just carry little pitchforks. I want to come up with like a house holiday decoration where they're all like, they all have like pitchforks.
I like that idea. I like Krampus. Krampus is my new favorite.
Krampus, kind of. Krampus meets Elf. Let's okay. We have a movie idea.
Stacy, you got to watch Krampus.
I've never heard of that. Krampus?
That's good.
Okay. I'm going to now. Okay.
The opening credits are classic. If you know what I'm talking about, Michael, the opening credits.
I need to watch it now. Yeah.
Oh no.
It's been a minute, but yeah.
Go back and watch it. But anyways, the point being is that in both of those instances, whether it's playing basketball or going off to like be a musician, I set all of that aside to deny myself and instead give myself to what I thought God and the church felt was most important. And it was a lifelong pattern that I had to break free from over the last number of years, getting so oriented to doubting myself and devaluing myself and my desires and what would make me happy, and realizing that's not a sin, which I was told was selfish. That's being selfish. It's not.
Yeah, man,
crucify your flesh.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
There's that word. It's such weird. Christians think that the words Christians come up with is so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a little guy. He lives in my heart. Little guy. He's knocking on the door. I have a door on my heart. This is
I used to
actually
actually picture that.
Yeah.
You did.
Well,
I mean, who didn't as a kid? So
I know.
Well, it is interesting, like the literalism that I grew up, because I remember, because I played the trumpet, like I said, and I remember distinctly, and I don't know my age, or maybe I was like grade school into like junior high. I remember being afraid of hearing the loud horn blast that's going to signal the coming of Jesus back. And and remember feeling like this instrument that I played, how I also feared how someday I could hear this sound, and it would mean that it's the end. And then then the thing that I wouldn't tell anybody about would be like, I would feel guilty because my selfish part of me was saying, well, I didn't get a chance to do any of the things that I wanted to do.
Yes.
Like, I wanted to grow up.
Yeah.
I wanted to have sex.
Yes.
I wanted to, these are things really important for a junior high.
That was like super important, even for a teenage girl.
Yeah. Like,
That's it.
Jesus, you need to just pause this
Just
second
wait.
until
I have
Wait till I'm
things to
done.
do.
at least have sex. Then
Yeah, that was like number one.
come back. It's whatever.
Man.
But
Man, that's why it's
you know,
always good to
but-
confess. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Right after. You're good. You're good.
Yeah.
Till next time.
yeah, but it is scary. This is where I think, it truly is a traumatizing thing that we expose our children to over and over and over.
Mhm.
I think about it with a very somber sense of grief over
Yeah.
the kind of stories that I made common in their life, in their narrative. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough, man.
No,
Well, break the chains of religion. They always talk about breaking the chains of sin and
Yeah.
bondage, but man, when you break those chains of religion, that is freeing. That is.
It
That's,
really is.
I do, and I think I take a healthy sense of pride in that. I've shared in a number of other contexts that to the best of my research, in terms of my parents, to my grandparents, to my great grandparents, to my great great grandparents, or what have you, I'm the first person in my family in about 200 years to leave Christianity.
Oh my goodness.
And so I think when it's hard, when it's really hard and things are happening, or maybe my kids are still struggling at times with some of those changes, I'm trying to think of, just how important this might be someday to,
break the
not
cycle.
only my children, but great grandchildren and so forth,
Wow.
grandchildren and so forth, that they can experience a life again that's big, that's open, that's I love what you had to say, Stacey. I said one of the things has become a mantra of mine when people have asked me what I believe is I see my creed as the question mark. That's it. That's my creed now, is this sense of curiosity. Like, I know some things, but I'm always open to learning more. And I think when you can create that kind of an open universe, it's so much fun. It's like a never ending sandbox to just play around in.
Yeah.
And
keep
that's
learning,
the
keep
best
growing.
aspect of playing. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Dan D, thanks for the $10. Don't come yet, Jesus. Thanks, Dan.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Oh,
Stacy's mom.
my mom
It may be
wants
too
to
personal
know.
of a question, but was the
it's
breakdown of Kurt's marriage due to deconversion? Yeah.
No, I appreciate that, and I've tried to be really open in the process of it. I think that was a factor, but to me, ultimately, it was the fact that the person that I ended up marrying was just not somebody that I was well suited to be with in terms of their interests, in terms of all of those things.
Yeah.
So I think that certainly my being authentic in terms of my beliefs was a factor in that. But I don't think it was, at least in her mind, I don't think it was a definitive factor. Like, she would have, kept going with it. But I knew that I wasn't happy in the relationship in other ways.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing, just to be really candid about, is when you're deeply unhappy and you are secretly kind of loathing yourself, you also make poor choices. And so I think that I think that those were factors in that relationship ending. And but I genuinely hope that it's also something that is going to be healing in the long run. It's kind of fun. Like, we're both dating people now, so it's like, hey, see life on the other side. There's and like, I'm really happy, and like, she seems pretty happy with this guy. I'm like, hey, let's put the two together. Like, this turned out okay. And I know it was really hard, and it was hard on each other. It was hard on our girls.
Kids,
it's never, that part of it's never easy. But I think there was some aspect, in answer to that question, that deconversion was definitely a contributor, but it wasn't the only thing.
Sometimes the grass is actually greener on the other side, for sure.
It really is. If the grass is, again, I go back to those two concepts of fear and shame. Wherever those two are really present, it's typically one that's very toxic, and it leads to you being inauthentic in order to conform in some way that results in a very shallow security. So people accept a shallow security for all kinds of psychological reasons, often related to trauma and things that they've experienced in their childhood. But when you get to a point where you're healthy enough and you value yourself enough that you pursue things that aren't the result of you being coerced by fear or shame, you just, believe it or not, you end up happier. I mean, that's
weird.
It's
Weird.
really
really good advice, actually.
I'm just curious, did any of you, because for a period of time, I also used to get gaslit pretty well over I was being told, no, you're angry. Like, look at you. You're so angry. You're angry at God. You're angry at the church, but you're really angry. And I was just thinking, I'm like, I think I'm becoming a pretty self-aware person. I'm like, I'm doing a
self-evaluation. Yeah.
Self-evaluation. I'm doing a scan here.
Like,
I'm not sensing a lot of. I'm actually pretty cool with.
No.
This is
I felt more angry as a Christian, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
I felt
I actually embrace my anger. I'm definitely an angry atheist. I hate the religion. I will speak out against it as much as possible.
True too.
So I am definitely an angry. I grew up in this crap. It stuck with me, and I had to. No, I'm angry. I'm still angry. I don't know if I'll ever get over that. But no, I'm not mad at people. It's just the religion itself. Yeah.
And I do think that because I want people to know, and when I think about it, when I think about the pains that I know that I personally experienced as a result of the impact of these kinds of toxic ideologies and cult-like. Or not even cult-like.
It's not even cult-like. No, it is a cult.
It's cult. Yes, it's not cult-ish. It's cult. It's a cult.
Yeah.
Very culty.
It has all the it has all the characteristics. It checks the boxes.
Yeah.
It's just mainstream. That's all. I just grew up in a mainstreamed cult, but it's still a cult. So and if you start talking to me about influences of this. Especially, I think there's been a lot of attention on the rise of white Christian nationalism, which I don't really consider it the rise. I think it was just
dormant.
It was dormant. Yeah, it's not like it's new.
Stoking the fire.
Yeah. Well, in many ways, it was. Again, being born in 1974, you think about the era of evangelicalism that I grew up in was like this is when the Jerry Falwells and the Pat Robertsons were starting to marshal the troops and all of that stuff. I grew up in that context. I grew up with Ken Ham being like the most brilliant scientist in the world, in my opinion. It's like I remember getting the videotapes, the Ken Ham Creation Research Institute.
She's not wrong.
Mad. Watch
I
out.
saw that.
My mom is very mad.
Get pissed, get angry.
She is.
Yeah.
So, I think about that. Like I've had to walk through a lot of that in terms of my relationship with my parents.
That was one of the questions I had for you. How'd they take that? Yeah.
Well, it's complicated, isn't it? It's even further complicated. It's something else that I've been pretty candid in sharing about because I think it's important that more and more people know about it, because I think it was, for a period of time, it was very common to harp on, say, the Catholic Church around issues of sexual abuse, but it was very quiet when it came to a lot of the Protestant traditions.
Absolutely.
And then more recently, there's been a lot that started to come out about issues within the Southern Baptist Convention that they're wrestling with and so forth. So I grew up in a household, and I didn't know this until a revelation. That's not the right word to use in this group.
Actually, it is. We're ex-Christian. We all know. We understand the.
Well, yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So but there was basically I learned about issues of sexual childhood abuse in my childhood at none other than the hands of my father, who was also a deacon and kind of a leader in the church, and not in a vocational sense, but still very much involved. My parents were very much, my mom played the piano and the orchestra or the organ for all of her life. And in what's hard, this is your childhood is this weird, complex, jumble of moments that I could remember where there was loving, compassion, support, enjoyable experiences, but then it's all tarnished by this fact that I was in a very physically unsafe situation for a little while, and then spiritually and emotionally, I was perpetually in a state of fear. And my parents it was normalized to them too. Like they were taught this same concept. Especially, I would say my mom, because my mom grew up in something called the General Association of Regular Baptists, or GARB. So they hardly exist anymore, but it was like garbage. Yeah, short for
GARB for short.
But like hyper fundamentalistic Christianity that you would have associated with like the 1930s and 40s and 50s, where no dancing, no drinking. My grandfather made my mom quit her first job. When she came back, she got a job being a waitress on roller skates at one of the one of the burger joints. What do they call them? I can't remember the name. Anyways, but she got a job.
Pop
that
shops.
was her first job. What's that? Yeah,
pop shop.
Like a pop shop.
Yeah, I think so. Well, we'll roll with that.
Shake Shack.
She came back with her uniform and put on her uniform, and my grandfather took one look at it and said, "You're quitting that job. You're not working one day there." And I think it was because the skirt went down to an inch above her knee. Like that was.
I'm sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So sexy.
So I know. Yeah, I know. So it was out of that, environment that produced, here's this relationship that my parents had, and then I experienced as a child. I've had a lot of, you talk about anger, a lot of anger.
Yeah. No kidding.
So, yeah.
Well, that was a great question for the ending of the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do have another one though for you. Why do you hate God so much?
I don't know.
No, why do you hate God so much?
There.
Oh, why does he hate God? Yeah. Well, again, it's hard to hate somebody that you don't believe in.
That's a great answer.
I've heard that before, and I actually embrace that. I think that I do have a degree of I strive to have a degree of compassion for us as human beings who we're whirling around in this vast universe at some crazy speed, trying to figure out each day what this is all about. And I think some people, and it's very easy to do over time, they build up their own mythologies that kind of help them navigate it. Unfortunately, many of those come with a lot of extremely toxic ideas. I hate those ideas. I don't hate an imaginary God because he's not a person to hate. I despise and I challenge any ideological concept that's going to take us away from being authentic and happy. Those two concepts.
Absolutely.
To value and love yourself. So my girls, I'll finish on this note. My girls know that I have if there are any principles of life, right, to base your life off of. Here's And I hate that it's 4 because it reminds me of like the 4 spiritual laws. But you know, I just say, I tell my girls, listen, the things I've learned, I'm passing on to you. You take them for whatever it's worth. But first of all, no, it's kind of like love, you know thyself, but I expand it to, it's like know and love thyself. Like now it's not one thing. It's one thing to learn about who you truly are, but also really then to love and value and honor who you are. The second is related to, the second is sometimes we learn because we respond to all kinds of different trauma and environments. We make really poor decisions. So you need to secondly, you need to own your shit. you need to recognize, you know, what it is that, what you've done wrong. But then thirdly, oh my God, this is horrible. I'm forgetting one of the 4 spiritual laws here of Kirt's 4 spiritual laws. Because the last one is keep moving forward, keep growing, keep progressing. Why am I blanking? Oh, that's
onward
horrible.
and upward.
It can't be that important. But
We can skip that step.
Skip that step. Yeah. God, what a weird way to end the show. But all I have to say is,
it's been weirder. It's okay.
Yeah, it's been okay. Good. I'm good. But all that to say is that I think that you know, any ideology that causes people to embrace and be motivated by fear or shame in such a way that it hurts other people, it hurts the living world around us. I'm deeply opposed to those, and I will continue to use every breath that I have for this life, every opportunity I can, like an opportunity like now to share some of my story in a way that hopefully moves and inspires people to move in a different direction. And so I appreciate this opportunity to be a part of that. Yeah.
We appreciate you
sharing your story. Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's not easy sharing your story sometimes. So it's helpful.
No.
Thank you. So do you have any future projects coming up? Anything?
You know, it's interesting. I am involved in some conversations with individual professionals in the field of recovery from religious trauma and cults and so forth around, and other organizations and networks that would be interested in something like this, around the value, the need for transitional spaces, living spaces, even for individuals who are leaving cults, religions. My particular passion is for those who, like me, have left professional ministry. So I think that there are huge numbers of people out there. I don't have an exact percentage, but if I were to do a poll and say 100%, let's say a poll like every pastor in the US, I said, if somebody could provide you with the financial support and the physical space to leave ministry today, training into another profession, all those things that would make sure that you and your family feel supported and you can make that change, how many of you would take that on the spot? And I think it would be a shockingly high number of individuals who would say, this isn't really who I am, I want out. And so that's kind of an area that I'm particularly interested in exploring.
You would be great at that. I want to know more about that one. So pursue that.
Okay. When you do that, come back on. We'll talk about that.
Please.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Plug your stuff. Where can we find your thing at?
You can check out a few more of my heresies at a blog that I started up a while back. 3Ws.Kirt E. E is an echo. That's my middle initial. Lewis, Lewis. So KIRTE Lewis.com. That's the URL for it.
Awesome.
You can go there. You can especially under the categories of faith versus religion or theologian. There's a lot. Anyways, there's a lot of content.
There's a lot there.
You can check out.
Yeah.
And,
keep you busy for a while.
You have good stuff.
There's a suggestion box in there. So if you ever think of something else you'd like for me to explore, write on, drop a note in there. I've been a little bit quiet for a while, but I'm actually storing up ideas and getting ready to launch back into putting some fresh content up there.
Awesome. Atheists in action. Love that shit.
Yes.
Apostacie, where can we find your stuff?
Here on Wednesdays, and then Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. You can follow me.
Awesome. Find me at theBibleSaysWhat.com, YouTube, TikTok now. Oh, it's so weird. I don't know if I don't like that place. Apostacie, why don't you take us out in a prayer?
Yes. Could we all bow our heads?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just joking. You did it, but I was joking. All right.
What happened? What's
No, just want to thank our Patreons, Michael Wiseman, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, Deborah Grace, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, and Phil Calderone. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Thanks for watching, and have a great night.